All right, it is my distinct honor and privilege to welcome our next speaker, featured guest. You all know him. He really doesn't need any introduction. He is an innovator, a businessman, someone who really thinks outside of the box. You've seen him on your TVs with Shark Tank, investing in America's small business entrepreneurs, those people who are out there, the risk takers of our country. He's a disruptor. He owns the Dallas Mavericks. That's how I know him. I'm from Texas, so we always cheered for the Mavericks, and we saw him sitting there on the sidelines. It is my distinct honor and privilege. Join me in welcoming Mr. Mark Cuban.
Thanks, everyone.
Make sure this mic is all right. Well, Mark, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
You know, I think there's a lot to unpack
Wait,
here.
I'm gonna trade you for an unused water.
Okay.
Nope.
This one is there. Yeah, find you one. There you go.
See how I get shit done?
Yes. Action, action, action. I want to just start. I mean, there's a lot to unpack. I think, you know, you're relatively new in crowds like this. I mean, I know you came onto the scene.
Y'all are feisty. I love it.
Yeah, exactly. But let's start with business. I mean, business has been central to, I think, the American story. You think back, Industrial Revolution, the railroads, the robber barons. It's always been a part. I mean, small businesses, innovation. You know, that's Silicon Valley. That's what we're about. You know, when we look at the stage recently at the inauguration and we see all of these billionaires from the tech companies lined up to basically, you know, kiss the ring. You know, are we seeing a sea change in the relationship between business and politics, or has it always been this way?
No, so two things there. One, when you talk about small business, you talk about the American dream. What is the one thing that makes this country different than every country in the world? That's the idea that every single kid, every adult, you can be 6, you can be 60, you can be 90. And when you have that feeling in your stomach and you got that one idea, has anybody had that idea where you thought about Everybody has, right? You get that idea and you think, oh, this could be good. And then you go to a friend, what do you think? Would you buy it? Oh, yeah, that's pretty cool. Then you go on Google and you search, you know, like, oh, nobody's doing it. Put aside that 50 people have gone out of business trying it, right? But then, in every other country, 99% of the people that had that idea would just stop. In this country, people move forward and start those businesses. And so that's what makes us different. It doesn't matter who the president is. Doesn't matter who the president was. Doesn't matter who the next president's going to be. Every single kid gets that feeling because they live in this country, and that's what makes us different. So when some people get to the top and they have really, really big businesses, sometimes they have a lot at stake. And so why are all these quote-unquote oligarchs, and I hate that term, but why? Because of artificial intelligence. Is that me? Sorry. I got my Go music up there, sorry. Because if you're Google, Meta, Microsoft, go down, you know, Amazon, if Donald, with one swipe of the pen, Donald Trump can wipe out their businesses. And in artificial intelligence, we don't know for sure if it's going to be a zero-sum game, but if you're trying to win AI, then you can't be excluded. And so if it means they have to, you know, the only thing I was surprised is, you know, that Donald didn't hand them, you know, personalized knee pads that said, you know, Zuck, Meta, you know, Bezos, Amazon, you know, because they had no choice. They had to be there because, you know, you get on the wrong side of them and you don't want, you know, a true social post saying, you know, we're not giving them access to A, B, or C. So to answer your question, it's not changing business, but when you're trying to win a zero-sum game, a global zero-sum game, right, you have to be there.
Yeah, and I mean, but it's sort of like that's the Trump effect, though, on business leaders a little bit. I mean, the Republican Party, we were talking about it, it's sort of become the Trump family business in some ways. And it's just, I think, at least for me, I know a lot of people here, it kind of shocks your conscience because we're not used to seeing, you know, people hawking Bibles sold by Trump. I mean, is there a way to fix that, or is that a part of just
Let me
where we
tell you
are
this.
as a society.
So first, I'm not a Democrat. I'm an independent. I'm not a Republican. I lean right fiscally. I lean a little bit left socially. But I try to be non-dogmatic. Yeah, there's nothing to clap for there. Yeah. I try to be non-dogmatic and be one of those people who say, well, I think for myself. Okay, sometimes I get it right, sometimes I get it wrong. But I can't say this as an entrepreneur and someone who just tries to pay attention. Parties are dead. You know, we don't think, you know, hey, I'm a Democrat, look at me, da-da-da, or hey, I'm a Republican. You know, you've seen registrations on Republicans increase some, and, you know, because Donald Trump is a great salesperson. He really is. He's a great marketer. I put him up there, Donald Trump, then Paris Hilton, then Dennis Rodman. Seriously, I mean, those two below are some of the best marketers I've ever seen in my entire life. And Donald Trump surpassed them. So he's able to market in ways that, you know, surpass and supersede parties. And yeah, it's great to have Act Blue and, you know, the Republican equivalent, but I just don't think parties are the driving force anymore. When it comes to businesses and Donald Trump, like, again, when you're a great I've started businesses since I was a kid, and I've been a salesperson, am a salesperson, will always be a salesperson, so I know a salesperson when I see one. And there's different types of salespeople. There's some people that just sell everything, and then everybody behind them goes, oh shit, now we have to do it, right? Have any of you ever worked in a business like that or seen that, right? It's just like, whatever the customer wants, they'll say yes to. Now, I can use another analogy. A guy walks into a bar, sees a hot girl, will say whatever, but I'm not going to go in that direction. But that, in essence, is how Donald Trump has become so successful, because he's able to put out messages and people see in him what they want to see. But it doesn't mean he can execute on them. And that's where we are right now. He's still in the salesmanship stage, and I think now people are starting to ask, all right, it's great to sell it. Now can you execute on it? And as it applies to business again, right, in any business, if I'm competing with somebody who's a great salesperson and really gets people excited about their product but never really executes and follows through, then, okay, I want that. That's a good thing. The way President Trump is handling things right now is a gift to the Democrats. It's a gift, right? It's not that he doesn't have the right intention. I'm not here to throw him under the bus. I mean, I think there's too much reflexology. Trump sucks. He's a Nazi. He's a fascist. How'd that work in the campaign? It did. You know, the analogy I use, right? The analogy I use is you marry somebody that your family hates. For at least the first 3 to 6 months, even if you find bodies in the basement, you're not admitting it to your family that you made a mistake. And so as a result, you have to, you know, if you're the Democrats or you're trying to counter them, whether you're a conservative, whatever it may be, you have to recognize, you know, telling this other company's customers that they're dumb doesn't work, because they're not dumb, right? They bought into what they saw in that person. And that's just the way it is. It was that way in 2016. It was that way in 2020, right? We didn't get what we expected with Joe Biden in a lot of respects. And it's that way in 2024. And that's a lot of the way it works with presidential races, right? You see what you want to see. But at some point, you have to execute. And I think President Trump is overselling. Elon is going to make his job even 1,000 times harder, because Elon doesn't give a shit. He's like, fuck it, I'll be rich no matter what, you know? And so that's making it harder. But you don't, when you look at the people President Trump is choosing for cabinet and other positions, maybe with a few exceptions, but typically you don't say, that is the best person that I would have picked. The fact that you're laughing says it all. And if you don't get the best person to do the job, someone's got to back up all the salesmanship, and there's nobody there to back it up. And so that's why it's a gift, because we can be patient if you don't like what you see in the White House, knowing there's nobody there to truly execute on the vision that Donald Trump has. And again, I'm not here to tell you that everything that he says and does is absolutely wrong. I mean, even a stop clock, right? But, he's got to be able to execute on it. There's a lot of things I disagree with him on vehemently, but the real reason that I didn't support him is how he does things. And the opportunity for the Democrats and business people, and you for that matter, is to stand up and look for ways to create calm and order out of chaos. Because this is a moment in time to do that right now.
Yeah, and speaking of the salesmanship.
It's so easy. I'm just,
Speaking of the salesmanship aspect, another thing you've been talking about a lot recently are all of these crypto coins that you see. I mean, Trump put one out right before his inauguration, and then everybody lost all their money like the day or two after.
Yeah, 800,000 people lost money.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm curious your thoughts. I mean, you've been hitting on Dave Portnoy over at Barstool Sports, did a whole thing about it. I mean, is this a new frontier that we should be embracing? Is it the Wild West? Should people just eat their losses? Or do we need some regulation?
Like any other new technology. There's really good applications that'll turn into something important, and then there's dreck, there's junk. I started, when I started the streaming industry, a company called AudioNet that turned into broadcast.com, back in the internet bubble, right, if you just put up a website, oh my God, it's a website, it's worth $1 billion. And we're kind of gone through that some with crypto. But 2 points, there are applications that are good for crypto, but to get it to be a real industry, there has to be some regulation, right? There's things called stable coins, there's algorithmic stable coins, there should not be algorithmic stable coins, just fiat-backed stable coins. But if you're using crypto to raise money, there should be a registration process. But as somebody who's gone to the SEC.gov site and tried to fill out all the forms to release a token for a company I have called lazy.com, so if you collect NFTs, go to lazy.com. If you want to see my NFTs, lazy.com/mcuban, but who's selling? But there needs to be a way that's designed to fit crypto. And I said this to Gary Gensler. I just happened to run into him at CNBC in the green room. And I'm like, you realize you're going to lose the election for Kamala Harris. And he's like, what? I don't pay attention to politics. I'm like, that's fine, but I just want to tell you. And I truly believe it was crypto that was the difference in winning and losing the election. 245,000 votes in the 7 swing states. And the biggest change in demographics were young people of color, particularly men. Now, why is that important for those of you who don't understand crypto? Based off the looks of the faces here, kind of like mine, we grew up and it was a rite of passage to get a bank account, wasn't it? You got your first bank account, Aunt Sadie gave you $5 you put in there, and then one day you got a checking account and you wrote your first check and it was like, then you got your first credit card. In my case, they tore it up, but that's a different story. Now imagine a kid today in 2025 that's 18, 19, 20 years old. They're not going to the banks because the banks don't want their accounts because there's not enough money in the account. And you can't put it in there because the fees are so high, it doesn't work. So what do? You go to Robinhood, you go to Coinbase, you download their apps, you get them 10, 50, $100, and now all of a sudden, if that Bitcoin or Dogecoin goes to the moon, my $100 is now $200 and I feel rich. But if one party has this one dude named Gary Gensler at the SEC doing everything to take that money from you and tell you shouldn't own that Dogecoin or Ethereum or whatever it is, XRP, whatever Solana, you're not going to vote for that party. Because he's basically saying, I want your net worth to go away. And so I sat there and I said this over and over again, and finally the Democrats got it, but it was too late. Gary, the damage was done. And I bring this up because crypto is a unique opportunity. Because as much as Donald Trump said, yes, Bitcoin, I support it, and I'm hiring people that support it, he really hasn't done anything with it or for it. The SEC has taken some steps back on some cases, but there's no formalization of anything yet. And so there's an opportunity for somebody who really cares about those kids in the bank who are now in the crypto banking system to do something for them. And then there's the junk side of crypto, the meme coins. Let me just tell you something. The only reason a person sells cologne, watches, Bibles, what else?
Gold tennis shoes.
Yeah, gold tennis shoes. That, by the way, in the terms of service, somebody sent to me, said, we may not ship these. I only wish they came on Shark Tank. I would have had so much fun with that. But the only reason somebody sells all that shit is because they have to. You know, honestly, I'm the luckiest guy in the world. I mean, my net worth doesn't need to increase. My kids are good, their kids are good, their kids are good, their kids are good, and their kids are good. You know, I don't need to sell gold tennis shoes I might not ship. And if you decide to, it's because you have to. So, but that's a different point.
Well, let's talk about a business that you have started that I think a lot of people here are interested to hear more about, and that is Cost Plus Drugs, which I think is...
Oh, thank you.
Many of you know about it. You know, it's geared towards what I think many of us know we experience every day is it's a big pain point for a lot of Americans who struggle to pay for drugs, prescription drugs. Talk a little bit about the mechanics of that, how it came to be, and do you think it can scale, you know, this idea of taking out middlemen, can it scale across the healthcare space?
For sure. So I got a cold email from a Dr. Alex Oshmayansky probably 4 years ago. And he said, Mark, I'm creating this thing called a compounding pharmacy in Denver, Colorado. And what we want to do is make generic drugs that are in short supply. I'm like, that, first of all, didn't make sense. It's generic and it's in short supply. And there are things like injectables for pediatric cancer. Literally, babies can't get their pediatric cancer drugs because they're in short supply. I'm like, that's crazy, first of all. And then I was like, but that's not big enough, you know? How can we think bigger? And it was right around that time that the farmer bro, Martin Shkreli, was going to jail. And I was like, how is this dude able to take this one little generic drug, Daraprim, and jack up the price, you know, 750% or whatever it was? And I started digging in, and it became very, very obvious that the missing link in the pharmaceutical side of the industry was transparency. You know, think about what happens when you get a prescription. Your doctor says, oh, you need this blood thinner, Eliquis, whatever. Then the next question is, what pharmacy do you use? It's never a question of economics. What's your co-insurance going to be? What's your copay going to be? Do you have insurance? Do you have a high deductible? Can you afford it? And so I was like, look, if there's no information on pricing, that's the opportunity. So we created costplusdrugs.com. I'll say it again, costplusdrugs.com. And if you go to costplusdrugs.com, and I see a lot of guys my age, right? So let's just pick a drug, Tadalafil, which is generic Cialis, right? Not that I'm suggesting anything, guys, but when you go and you put in the name of the medication, if we carry it, we carry about 2,500, but we don't have everything yet, but we're working to get more, which is a whole nother conversation on the drugs we don't have. But if you put in Tadalafil, it says, oh, look, we carried Tadalafil. But we show you our cost. We show you our actual cost. Then we show you our markup, which is 15%. How did I get 15%? I just thought it was fair. And then if it's mail order, it's $5 for shipping and handling and $5 for a pharmacist to review to make sure there's no contraindications. And that's it. And so for all of you that might at some point need generic Cialis, I'm just saying that you can get 90 of them for under $10, which is cheaper than a bag of M&Ms. And which would you rather have next to your bed? A big bag of M&Ms or a big bag of generic Cialis? Because I am doing my part for the population problems we are having in this country.
Man of the people.
I am a man of the people. So we have Tadalafil, generic Cialis, but we also have drugs like imatinib, which is for people with cancer. And if you would, even today, there are certain PBM-owned pharmacies that if you just walked in and you either had a very high deductible or had no insurance at all, they would charge you $2,000. Or if you went to a nice pharmacy, they might charge you $200. If you go to costplusdrugs.com, depending on the strength, we'll charge you $22. I just had somebody send me an email, and I get these emails all the time saying, Mark, it wasn't for imatinib, but I had this cancer, and it was going to cost me $7,300 a month, and I decided I was going to die because I didn't want to put my family in debt. And then my doctor told me about costplusdrugs.com, and it's $93 a month. Now, how does that even happen? Thank you. How does that even happen in this day and age? The healthcare industry is so big, it's become incredibly opaque. And because it's opaque, all these big companies come in and they say, look, we're going to squeeze out every penny that we can. It's not about technology, because the pharmacy industry is really, really simple. The whole healthcare industry is really simple. You go to the doctor prescribes something or says you need to go, and get a surgery for this, this, and this. And there's really only two questions, because we tend to trust our doctors. The only two questions are, how much are they going to charge, and how are you going to pay for it? That's it. And so that's what we're focused on, starting with drugs, carrying as many as we can. And if you hear discussions about these things called pharmacy benefit managers, PBMs, there's two types. There's the biggest ones, which are not transparent, and then there's ones called pass-through PBMs that we work with. There's 25, 30 of them that truly are transparent. And so the big PBMs, they don't want you to know what the price of any medication is. They want you to think that they're doing you a favor by working with your insurance company. When you hear about all this stuff, I don't want to go into all the inside baseball stuff, but they're not the good guys, right? And then on the healthcare side, we're hearing all this bad stuff about insurance, right, and healthcare. Let me give you an example, and again, I won't spend too much time going into the details, but let me give you an example of how messed up, and I'm being polite when I say messed up, the healthcare, financial side of the healthcare industry is. Think about this. Your insurance company, or insurance companies, the biggest insurance companies, they call them the BUCAs, Blue Cross Blue Shield, United Healthcare, et cetera. They decide they're going to create a new insurance plan. And they're going to sell it on the ACA, or they're going to sell it to you, they're going to make it available to your employer, who makes it available to you. And in that plan, they decide what the deductible is, right? They'll give you a bunch of different options, and then they make it available to you as the employee or on the ACA, and then you decide what your deductible and out-of-pocket's going to be, right? And then, God forbid, but you go to the hospital and there's something expensive, whatever it may be, you need an operation. And your deductible is $5,000 or $2,000, but you don't have $2,000. Do you know who eats that debt? The hospital or the doctor. You know how much say they had in the design of the plan and the plan you chose? Zero. So think about that. This whole industry is so back-ass halfwards. We've got the people who provide the care having to be the subprime lenders that take on all the debt. And so when we read about all these billions and billions and hundreds of billions of dollars in medical debt that people can't pay, we blame the hospitals, but the hospitals had nothing to do with the out-of-pocket costs that were created and designed by the big insurance companies. That makes no sense. So I've got this company I just created. It's actually not a company, it's just a group called costpluswellness.com that it's nothing right now, but what we're doing for my companies is we're negotiating directly with hospitals and doctors, and we're saying to them, look, all this debt you have to be responsible for, and it's even worse. Like, you would think that if the insurance company and a hospital do a deal that says for a hip replacement it's $15,000, that when somebody gets their hip replaced that has insurance from that insurance company, they just pay the $15,000, right? No. They say, oh yeah, we got a contract for $15,000, so what? We'll give you 10. And if you don't like it, sue us. So they sue each other, and so when you hear all these things about the administrative cost of health care, it's because these insurance companies are making it ridiculously difficult for hospitals to get what they're paid and doctors to get what they're paid. And because of that, the hospitals are saying, well, shoot, if everybody else is taking advantage of the system, arbitraging the system. We're going to have to do the same thing to try to compensate for all the bad debt and us having to, try to just collect money that costs us 2 to 5% of our revenue. So we're going to create these things called facility fees, and we're going to create this, and we're going to do that. We're going to use 340B to make up for it. It's just this cluster, circle, that because it's a mess. When it's the simplest industry in the country, you need help from a doctor. The doctor got trained for help. They help you. They just used to decide how much you're going to get charged and then work with you to get paid. The easiest thing for the government to do, if it was up to me, is just guarantee that debt and work out payment plans that are means tested. So if you're making $20,000 a year, you're already going through Medicare. And guess what? I sat and talked to 20 hospitals day before yesterday. And they were like, Mark, we'll do any deal you want because we just don't get paid anything on people who just walk in the door. So if the government were to guarantee them, they'd be willing to cut down all the other prices to the government for care. So if the government set up a program that just said, all right, hospitals, anybody that walks in, will guarantee it, but in exchange for that, we want lower pricing. The hospitals would say yes. All you got to do is simplify it because you have to take out all the middlemen. That's it. But anyway, so I could go on for days on healthcare. But go to costplusdrugs.com. Cheaper than a bag of M&Ms. What's next?
Cialis. All right. And I want at the end here, I want to turn to politics, and then we'll open it up for questions because I know folks are eager to talk to you.
Sure.
You were on the campaign trail this past election cycle.
Yep.
I think we saw you out there more than we've seen you in the past.
Yep.
Did you like it? What'd you learn?
It was kind of fun, actually. I learned that the Democrats can't sell worth shit. And they're so, persnickety about every little detail. And that's why the Republicans at the presidential level, I don't want to say kicked their ass because it wasn't like it wasn't a runaway, but yeah, like I said, Donald Trump can sell. If you gave the Democrats a dollar bill and said you can sell these for 50 cents, they would hire 50 people to decide if they really, to try to figure out how to do it, and then would not know how to sell a dollar bill for 50 cents. If you gave it to Donald Trump and said sell this dollar bill for $2, he'd figure out a way. Right? He'd tell you that $2 bill is huge. It's, it'll get you gold tennis shoes. It'll get you a Trump meme coin. That's the problem, and that's what I learned. And so I got to the point after the first event I went to, I said to the Harris people, you're not allowed to say a word to me. I don't care what you think. I'm just going to do what I think is right, and that's what I tried to go out there and do. And I told them, I don't want to go talk to Democrats. I want to talk to Republican and independent business people. Because I truly believe that, chaos is bad for business, and that's what we're seeing now. Even if you don't absolutely like the programs, the reality is, there's 33 million this is what I would say. There's 33 million businesses in this country. 30 million are single owner, sole proprietorships, and 95% of those make $400,000 or less. So from a tax rate perspective, their plan was if you're making $400,000 or less, your taxes aren't going up, and there's a good chance they were going down. And so, okay, they didn't know how to say that. They had no idea it was that simple. The other thing I talked about, inflation was a problem. But you know what's a bigger problem for businesses and households? The cost of health care. And I told them, look, here's what I learned with Cost Plus Drugs. And I said the same thing to the Trump administration and people I know there. I'm happy to come in and help. Right? I'm all about the United States of America and the American people first. I don't care about parties. I don't care anything else. If I can help, because that birth rate needs to go up, so I'm here to help. And so I would get into groups and I would say, what's more important to you right now? Cost of Gatorade going up 9%, or the uncertainty of the cost of your health care and the fear you have anytime somebody coughs or your grandparents sneeze, and knowing that there is an absolute path and not just a concept of a plan. I'm like, that's all you have to say. That's all you have to say, particularly to businesses, because any of you who run small businesses or part of small to medium-sized businesses, you know how terrifying it is not just if somebody gets sick and you're responsible for helping them because they're family. You don't just, the people you work with, you don't just say, sorry, my insurance isn't good enough. You know, you're there to help them. And, you know, and it's the same thing now with immigration. Biden's immigration plan was awful. He had no idea what he was doing. When they finally figured out people cared and it mattered, it was too late. But what they never talked about was deportation. And so I would sit in front of, you know, small businesses and say, do you really want someone knocking on your door asking for an I-9, which tell you the immigration status of your employees, and having to hand them and handing out the phone number, and knowing your entire employee base is terrified? Is that what you want? No. Demand the immigration you want from Harris, but don't be in a position where they're deporting. Like I just saw something, I read something yesterday where some guy who had gotten a letter in 2016 saying that, you know, he was legit and he had all his papers. He's being held now for 30 days and his family doesn't know what to do. And there's no process there to deal with it, and who knows when there's going to be a process. And look, Trump was smarter on the border than Harris was, period, end of story. But part of that was because Harris and the team did not know how to sell. And that's a big part of where we are in politics right now. Who has the best story, who gets the most attention, and who can get who to react to who. When you say they're eating cats and dogs, it's not because they're eating cats and dogs. It's because you're sitting there going, ha ha, now they're going to talk about cats and dogs all day, every day. And not about something important or that I care about. You know, and that's what's happening now. Do you really think that they're going to give you $5,000 refund because of what Doge finds? Let's think this through. We're $36 trillion in debt, and rather than using $5,000 per person to pay that down more, we're going to borrow more so we can pay you the $5,000 each, and then say we reduce the deficit. And then people there will agree, see, you reduce the deficit. Salesmanship. They're talking more about the $5,000 now than anything the Democrats are talking about. And it's such a layup for the Democrats. Like, I've talked to senators, I've talked to congresspeople, I've talked to you name it from the Democratic Party over the last couple of weeks since Trump got elected. And I'm like, let me just give you a simple playbook. You've got all these people who are taking a buyout, 80,000 people and growing. You've got tens of thousands, 100,000, maybe more, that are getting fired. Who's standing up for them? Why is it not the Democrats who wants to be the party of the people again? Why aren't you saying, we're going to pass legislation, even though they can't pass it, doesn't matter. We're talking salesmanship, right? And we're going to talk about this every day, that we are going to pass legislation that says, if you took the buyout, not 8 months, but one, we're going to guarantee you the amount, whatever it is. 2, we're negotiating for 16 months, knowing you'll settle for 12. And if you are pregnant, sick, have a chronic illness, disabled, your benefits will last forever, as long as you need them. Everybody else gets a year. Who's out there having that conversation? If the Democrats were there saying, look, we don't care about anything else. We are here to help the people who have just been put on the street. And we'll put together in this program some help for job seekers too. Easy, easy. If you heard this from Chuck Schumer, right, or Bernie would be good selling. I can't believe they're not taking care of their people here. You know, if you're pregnant, yes, you get benefits. If you're, you know, it's easy. You know, but nothing, crickets. All this money that's not getting passed through, right? The NIH money, all the grants. 51% administrative fee, cutting it to 15. Nobody's actually asking the grantees. So I said to the Democrats, I'm like, go to your state universities and say, would you take a haircut at all? Because right now you have complete uncertainty and you're looking at zero. And the first answer is, no, we can't. But then they deal with the reality and say, well, it's better something than nothing. And if the Democrats negotiated and said, look, that's all chaos. They're not organizing anything because they don't know how to organize and structure. Because Donald Trump, he puts PR over policy. He doesn't want to govern. He wants to sell. That's what great salespeople do. So just create some organization. go through and negotiate these things. Here's another one I told them. I said, and by the way, when I was out there for Kamala, I was saying we want to reduce the deficit, and they were agreeing we want to reduce the deficit, and Democrats say we want to reduce the deficit until Donald Trump says it. So here's the other thing I said to him. It's great if Doge finds fraud. Come out and say, yes, Elon, if you find fraud, those people should go to jail. So we are going to pass legislation that says if Elon Musk or Doge on Doge.gov promotes or posts that they found fraud, you must file criminal charges within 30 days. And if you don't, and you misled people, then you are liable for libel and slander. And again, it probably won't get passed. Maybe you get, because all you need is a few Republican senators, Republican House members. But now all of a sudden, Elon's got to either put up or shut up. You know, that's all people want. Just look, when we talk about shock and awe, no one say no. You know, if you can change things and fix things, great, shock and awe. But at least show us a plan. You know, the shock and awe is that, not that we disagree, is that they have no plan. They have a concept of a plan. We're going to get, anyway, sorry.
The whole conversation here, you've basically been describing a political system that really isn't serving the needs of the American people. It's sort of ripe for disruption. The parties.
I disagree with that. The system is our system. It's been here for 250 years. You know, it's always been tested in different ways, and it always will be tested in different ways. The question is, how do we respond to it?
Are we going to see your name on a ballot responding to it?
Hell no. No, it's not going to happen. Okay, if y'all write in and I don't have to do it, no, I don't want to be president. I'd rather fuck up health care. I'd rather, when it's all said and done, we had a family vote, and they're like, no. But it's like when I'm on my deathbed at 117 years old because healthcare got better, do I want to look back and think, okay, I was president, or do I want to say, okay, I was there when my kids graduated, I made my kids' basketball games, I was there when whatever, that's where I want to be.
All right. We'll go to questions now. I know we have the mics. Okay, great. Right here.
Hi, my name is Betsy. Thanks. I was curious if you would run, but in the absence of not running, I'm wondering, what can we do to counter Elon's money? No pressure. Just he's trying to buy a Supreme Court seat now in Wisconsin, and even though those aren't as sexy as a presidential race, they have major consequences. We see something similar going on in North Carolina, and like it or not, money matters in politics. It matters more now that Citizens United has been passed down. So I'm just curious, what can we do to counter Elon? I don't think
it's so much Elon's money. I think more it's just doing things like this, but it needs to be organic. If you want to protect democracy, if you think it's at risk, then, my money, Elon's money, whoever's money. Look, Elon's got more money than me, but in aggregate, there's more money than Elon has. Because when you read about, when you read about someone being worth $245 billion, he doesn't have $245 billion in cash. I don't even know how much money he has in cash because he's having to raise money for Twitter again. And so who knows? I don't care. But the bottom line is for him to spend $100 million, yeah, he could do that. I could do it. But I'd rather go to events in Wisconsin and support the people and get people out and answer questions. Because, look, like when he was buying votes in Pennsylvania, you only give away $1 million a day because you have to. Because you can't communicate. You know how much money I've given to political candidates in the last 20 years? Zero. Not a penny. Because I can think of 1,000 better things to do with that money to help this country. And I think my time is more valuable to come out and do things like this, or go to Wisconsin, or go wherever. And that's what we can do. You've seen some of the town halls now. People are starting to realize that chaos is not good for this country. There's no amount of money that overcomes that. And I think if you're not a Donald Trump supporter, the only person who can convince a Donald Trump supporter to not support Donald Trump is Donald Trump. He'll do it for us. He'll do all the hard work. He'll do all the heavy lifting. And you know what? If he changes and he comes to his senses on a lot of this stuff and the chaos is gone and we start, the deficit start, more power to him. Great. God bless America. Right? But, in terms of Elon trying to go to Wisconsin and everything, I just think getting organized and getting people there and telling them the truth. Because when you're running against an incumbent like Trump was, it's really easy just to throw at him and to sell against him. But when you're the incumbent and now all of a sudden he's got a litany of things that he says he's going to do and said he was going to do and can't do no matter what, that's your biggest weapon.
Next one. Let's go right here.
We'll get to you.
I have a question on disinformation.
Uh-huh.
So much on the internet, with Zuck also bending the knee, there's no fact checking, there's a lot of disinformation. How do we fight disinformation?
You don't. And I know that sounds disheartening, but people believe they were eating cats and dogs. Even if you, like having a conversation like this, if I said, I just got back from Springfield, Ohio, and I saw people eating cats and dogs, there's nothing you can do to stop that. People, here's how I respond. I would respond to this. Here's what I told the Harris campaign, and I've said to Democrats again. Is there anybody here who's not on Instagram or Facebook? Okay, a couple people. Everybody else has their information fed to them on the social media they're on by algorithms. And the algorithms, all they want to do is make more money for, Meta, Instagram, Facebook, right, Twitter, Musk. And so you've got to flood the zone with information to overwhelm those algorithms so that people take interest in your stuff and those algorithms start feeding them things that are true information. It's not about having another media company. And oh, by the way, I don't know if anybody here uses Blue Sky, but thank you. Because I think really that's the opportunity to counterbalance a lot of the strength on Twitter, because Blue Sky is a moderated platform. When I go to Twitter, I get some of the nastiest hate, the nastiest memes. On Blue Sky, I get some hate, right? But at least I can engage in a conversation. And the hate is, billionaires are a policy failure. Okay, I can deal with that. We'll eat you last. Okay, I can deal with that. The shit on Twitter is nasty, right? And I think most of the voting public would prefer a moderated platform. We don't want to go where there's hate continuously, whether it impacts us or not. And so the bigger point there is there are platforms where you can engage. And what I'm saying to all left-leaning media, Blue Sky's got 32 million users now. Twitter's got like 100 million. If we get to 60, if Blue Sky gets to 60 million, now all of a sudden the balance of power is different. Because you can engage and have conversations on Blue Sky that you can't have on Twitter. So how do if someone says something stupid on Twitter and you try to counter them, then you just get attacked left and right. Now, on Blue Sky, I can say something good about capitalism and I'll get attacked, but at least I can engage with them, right? And that's the counter to disinformation, countering the algorithms and having platforms where politicians and all of us can engage and have a real conversation, even if we disagree with each other. So if you're not on Blue Sky, please get on there. Follow me, I'm M. Cuban.
I think we got time for one more, and I see right at the back. Okay.
You got to ask your question.
Okay.
I don't want you to beat me up.
Okay.
My boyfriend loves you. And you answer him, that's great. So you said the Democrats don't know how to sell.
Correct.
So why don't we have a Cuban college that trains?
I'm trying. I literally have said I will sit with any of them.
No, but have a college. Submit and interview and all that, and they have to get a certificate.
So, okay, let me ask you a question. I can focus my time on fixing health care or a Cuban college for Democrats. I wish I had time. Look, I'm trying. I've told, you're right on, though. I'm making fun, but you're right on.
Because people don't really know. I mean, because what you're saying, they don't learn it.
No, I agree. I agree with you 100%. If I'm happy to help. I mean, maybe at some point, I've done videos for them, and I've tried to do things to try to give them some guidance. But we have to, stop getting politicians to be, just be normal people.
But you have to get a certificate.
I will work on the certificate. Thank
We
you.
got one more there at the back.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Go ahead. It's on. I think it's on.
Oh,
There you
okay.
go.
Sorry. My name's Dan Osborne. I ran for U.S. Senate in Nebraska against Deb Fisher as an independent candidate. Thank you. And I gotta say, Heath, your crowd size is pretty good. But yeah, and I think we ran closer than anybody who lost in the House and the Senate.
Yep.
So I think that just goes to show that America's ready for independence, working people. I'm a mechanic. I came from nowhere,
Good for
and
you, yeah.
we created something pretty special. So to continue that, endeavor, we're working with a lot of different people. I started a Working Class Heroes Fund, and we're actively recruiting around the country for working people and independence. And the idea is to get enough together that we can deny both parties full power, a Fulcrum
I like the
caucus, if you will.
concept for sure, yeah.
And, but in order to do that, we have a lot of obstacles to overcome, correct? Fundraising, as far as Act Blue and Win Red.
Yeah, but see, I disagree with that, right? There's different ways to do things. I've started business, I call it, Damon John on Shark Tank calls it the power of broke. And when I was sleeping on the floor, dead broke, mustard and ketchup sandwiches, you find a way. When you have something that makes sense, like, how much money we have spent at Cost Plus Drug? We've served millions of people, saved I don't know how many lives, made people's lives better. You know how much money we've spent on marketing? Zero, not a penny. And look, organizationally, I understand what you're saying. But when you can build an organic movement, it's not about fundraising. The money will find you, right? If the first thing you're doing is trying to raise money, you're just a politician with a great background and a great mission. But when you bring people together with a joint vision for the future, they will find other people. It's, in technology, we call it the network effect. That's what you're looking for. And you don't have to just spend money to get there. You have to have the right mission, because it costs nothing to go on Blue Sky, create a group, or create accounts and get people to follow you and have conversations there and say, look, all these people in Nebraska, in Omaha, we're going to be here. In Dallas, we're going to be there. And let the people do the work organically. I mean, I don't think the Tea Party went out and raised a boatload of money to get started, did they? I don't think Occupy Wall Street, they just got in tents, outside of Wall Street. I actually hired one of the guys. He's great. He's my crypto guy, one of the founders. The dude is smart, and he's a capitalist to the core. But he's a compassionate capitalist. He knows his stuff. And so they just got out there in tents, and that's what drew attention. They understood, That's why Paris Hilton and Dennis Rodman are up there with Donald Trump, because they didn't raise money and go get a marketing firm. They just called media and said, I'm going to be here, and here's what I'm going to be doing. There is a path without having to do everything just to raise money in it. And look, these guys can get you my email. I'm happy to provide support and give you guidance, but don't make it about money, because then all of a sudden you're always behind the eight ball. But I wish you the best.
Thank you.
Well, thanks. And we are out of time, so we'll have to save the Luca question for next time. But it's a pleasure to have you with us. Thank you very much for being here.
It was a lot of fun. Thank you.
Thank you.